Company of Heroes was almost unanimously named Strategy Game of the Year in 2006, and players anxious to get back into the World War II fray will find much to admire in Opposing Fronts, an expansion of sorts to the excellent original.
Crew ready!
The September snow is upon us.
And on such a warm day, no less.
This time, players will get to control the German Panzer Elite as they're put on the defensive during Operation Market Garden. Players will also be able to take a crack at guiding the British Second Army for the liberation of Caen. As in Company of Heroes, the narrative in Opposing Fronts is told through a mix of dramatic cutscenes, historical snapshots, and detailed mission briefings. They do well enough in keeping you engaged, but we know that you're either going to play or not play Opposing Fronts because of riveting gameplay.
We have destroyed an enemy unit.
Even though it's been billed as an expansion pack, Opposing Fronts is a standalone game. You don't need the original Company of Heroes to play it. However, if you do have the first game, you'll be able to play skirmish and online matches using any combination of the 4 factions. Opposing Fronts doesn't offer up vast amounts of new content, and at first it's a little disappointing that of the 2 new factions, one of them is a variation of the Germans. But in reality, the Panzer Elite play quite differently from the main German forces in Company of Heroes. They're quicker, don't really have any static defenses, and have 3 different doctrines that the player can invoke during the game. Scorched Earth allows the player to booby-trap or disable strategic points. Luftwaffe, among other things, gives players access to special units that can construct simple ground and AA artillery. And Tank Hunters obviously helps players deal with enemy armor. The British forces, on the other hand, are adept at digging in and attacking the enemy from a distance with devastating artillery barrages. Players can also focus the British Army in 3 different ways. The Royal Artillery gives additional powers to the already formidable artillery. The Royal Commandos offer the player a more tactical set of powers which help harass the enemy and track their movement. And finally, the Royal Engineers give a boost to offense by way of additional tanks and defense by improving entrenched positions. Players will get a good taste of all of these different units and abilities, although the 2 campaigns that are on offer fall on the short side. The gameplay in Opposing Fronts remains essentially unchanged from the original Company of Heroes, and that's definitely not a bad thing. The new factions are very interesting to play in their own right, and offer up plenty of new ideas to keep the gameplay feeling fresh. This is especially true when you go toe-to-toe with the factions from the original game. The single-player missions, though solid, focus quite a bit on setting up defenses and holding out, which, when it comes right down to it, isn't all that exciting. But as an added perk, players can now call in veteran reinforcements carried over from the previous mission. It's the multiplayer that will keep you coming back for more. Relic's online player ranking and matching service is a little cumbersome, but there's no shortage of willing and able opponents, which is what ultimately makes games of this type worth the price of admission. Opposing Fronts is one of the nicest looking real-time strategy games around. Relic has added some cool looking climate effects that are purely cosmetic, but nonetheless welcome. Everything else is as it was in Company of Heroes, but by no means does the game feel like an expansion pack done on the cheap. The same loving attention to detail found in Company of Heroes is also present in Opposing Fronts. If you missed Company of Heroes when it first came out, Opposing Fronts is a perfect way to get you into the game. As a standalone title, there's plenty of action to be found. Once you're up to speed, you can pick up the original for cheap, plug it in, and have many more hours of strategic fun. If you're a Company of Heroes veteran, Opposing Fronts will give you plenty of new tactics to try out. Expansion packs don't get much more solid than this.
We have no home!
Give up now and we fight for nothing! Do not let the American propaganda fool you.